Hello, my name is Wes Kiddo. I own Bulldog Builders. Today we are here to talk about hail damage to shingles or asphalt roofs. This is designed to be a beginning video or an introduction to this topic. I'm going to make a series of 3, 4, 5 of them, getting more advanced as we go. One of the things that is so difficult about this topic is it's subjective, meaning what is damage to shingle can be different to different people. For example, a roofing or an insurance company adjuster may have a very different understanding or definition to a bruise or definition of damage than, let's say, me or a homeowner. That's what makes this topic so challenging and why it's so important to understand some of the basics, so you have this down before we get to the more sophisticated nuances of this topic. I was a claims adjuster for almost 20 years, worked with every large carrier since 1995. Then became a public adjuster in 2013, and now I'm finally ended up as a contractor in Wisconsin. So I've seen a lot. I've been on maybe 10, 12, 15,000 roofs, met countless adjusters, countless contractors, a lot of engineers, so I have a pretty good handle on this topic and can offer opinions that a lot of people just aren't in a position to offer. With that being said, one of the first things I did as a claims adjuster before I even got on the roof was kind of assess the rest of the house to see how big the hail was, how severe a storm it was, and I would look for things what's called collateral damage. That would mean, am I seeing any broken windows, either in a car in the driveway or the house, broken vinyl siding or dented siding. I'm looking at gutters to see if there's big dimples in them. I'm not talking small little dimples, I'm talking big divots. These are all indications that very likely there would be damage to asphalt shingles or roofing. If I wouldn't see any damage to things what we used to call soft metal, that would be your fascia, your window wraps, your turtle vents, gutter caps, anything like that. That's a really thinner gauge metal. If that's not dented, then the likelihood of damage to shingles is definitely pretty low. These two are easy. If a house is absolutely blasted with 1,000 hits of vinyl siding is broke, really good chance that there's damage to the shingles. If there's no damage to the soft metal, probably no damage to the shingles. These are extremes. You would get on every storm you might get some of each, but most of the time they would fall into this category, which is maybe or a gray area. And then this is why this topic's so difficult, is because it is so subjective. What damages to one person may not be damage to another person. I really didn't like when I would meet someone that had the absolute answers on roofs, because in my opinion that doesn't exist. There's shades of gray of or degrees of damage, and it was seldom cut or dry or black or white, whatever you want to say. Usually there was somewhere in between, and they would be put in a maybe category. We'll get into that in the videos to follow, where I have samples of bruises and fractures and all that. But here are some things that also play a factor, as well as collateral damage. Here are some other things that take into consideration. The age and the condition of the shingle. The newer the shingle, the less likelihood of damage. The older the shingle, the more likelihood of damage. The number of layers. If there were 2 layers or more, the chances of damage are much greater. That's just because it's a softer backing, and it's just more susceptible to hail. Pitch of the roof is also very important. The flatter the roof, let's say a 412 versus a 1212, the chances of finding damage on all the slopes is greater. A lot of times if the storm was directional, meaning it would come from the west, you may find damage on one slope and not the other, particularly if it was steep. And that makes sense because it's hitting flush on, if it was a west storm, that west slope, where the east slope was shielded by the house. That you'd see that a lot in A-frames or high-pitch roofs. There's also other variables. The hardness of the hail. Size isn't necessarily the biggest indicator. You can have 3-inch hail, but if it's soft hail, it's not really doing any damage. You can also have small hail, nickel or dime size, that's very hard, that maybe have 70, 80, 90 mile an hour winds behind it, that can absolutely do damage to windows, siding, roofs, anything. So an adjuster that dismisses the validity of the claim based on the hail size isn't doing a very good job, because there absolutely can be damage from smaller hail if it's hard to driven by excessive wind. The sixth thing I got here is a type of shingle. Generally speaking, a 3-tab would be easier to damage than, let's say, an architectural or dimensional. There's some phenomenons in that. You may have a higher grade shingle, like a shake, presidential shake, that actually is a heavier shingle but may be more susceptible to hail damage. And the reason that would be is if they're overlapped and there may not necessarily be a backing on a portion of that shake. That particular section of that shake is more susceptible to damage. That concept is true when you get into ridge cap. Because the ridge cap has a gap behind it, the ridge cap is almost always the first place that you would see hail on a roof. That's where I would always start on a roof because it's a very good indication of shingle damage. I've got some future videos coming out where we get into some more advanced topics and examples of hail. We'll also get into the criteria, definitions, what happens if it doesn't go your way. All of these things will be addressed in future videos. This was designed to be a very basic introduction into this topic.